Fanatics is making boss moves, and for everyone in the sports card hobby, it's now time to go big or go home.
I'm feeling good, getting better, feeling good, I can't let it go. I'm feeling good, 'cause I never say never.
Hello, and here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Geoff Wilson Show. There's a shark swimming in the sports card waters, and that shark is now showing his teeth. Michael Rubin and Fanatics have a reputation for being relentless. Rubin is known for taking no prisoners and crushing competition. He's been clear from day one that he wants to own the entire sports card ecosystem, and now he's doing exactly what he said. Now, I wouldn't say that Fanatics' acquisition of PWCC was a shark-like move. It was a smart move, but it was an obvious one, and PWCC needed a buyer, and Fanatics was there at the right time. But there's other moves Rubin and Fanatics are making that are showing their real teeth. It's been reported, but not confirmed, that Fanatics worked a deal to start creating licensed NBA cards this fall, a few years before they were supposed to. It's also been reported, but not confirmed, that Fanatics has been signing key upcoming rookies to exclusive autograph deals. Victor Wembanyama and Bryce Young are among the names mentioned. If true, Fanatics has forced Panini into a horrible position this fall. The biggest rookies may not have RPAs in National Treasures and Flawless, nor autographs in Prism, but they may have Topps autograph cards instead. Can you imagine that? It's no surprise, actually, because Fanatics has already been ruthless. They've lured away some of Panini's top talent and successfully defended a lawsuit from Panini trying to stop them. These are all total boss moves by Fanatics, and I hope they're good moves for collectors in the long run, but that remains to be seen. Kelly, a lot happening. It's been a busy week and a lot to dive into today and what this all means for the greater sports card hobby as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when we talked to, when Fanatics, purchased Topps last year, we're 17 months away from when they did that. And there's been a lot of things that they've been slowly doing, like talent acquisition as far as hiring people for their own creative team and then outwards. There's been a lot of small strategic moves, right? And then I think that this particular move, the buying of PWCC, as you said, it wasn't, necessarily something that they anticipated, but it came along at the right time. And I think that the acquisition made sense. So in diving into the how it all worked out and why you think it makes sense and why you think it came along at the right time and why PWCC needed this, why don't we just go ahead and jump into that? Because I know the crux of what people are watching here is to figure out what's the baseline of all of the inner workings of how this came about, why this needed to come about for the hobby, why it was a good move for PWCC especially.
Yeah.
What is the basis of it? So can you give us a timeline of everything that went on? Yeah.
So what happened was there was some urgency around PWCC needing to sell. So obviously we heard the layoffs from PWCC that occurred a month or so ago. And what that really was, now we know in retrospect, was them shoring up their financials. And it was them getting that out of the way before they knew at that point that they needed to get acquired.
Yeah.
They wanted to get the layoffs done ahead of it. Because if what the acquirers would not want to have to do
is lay people off.
Would be acquire and then lay people off right away. That would Fanatics collectors who bid on it, alt who bid on it, the last thing they want to do is take a big PR black eye by saying we acquired PWCC, and then a month later we've laid off 30% of the workforce. So PWCC said we better do this in advance and do what needs to be done to make us more attractive to these acquirers. So what happened was PWCC apparently had a lot of debt, and they got, unfortunately, into some financial struggle with some of this relates back to capital loans that they were giving out on cards, right? So they had a program which at the time seemed like a very nice, appealing program for a lot of PWCC customers. I never participated in it, but I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's, it's kind of a nice program that they're offering that. But a lot of people got in trouble with it. The program was that they would, whatever your value of cards was in PWCC's vault, they would lend you back a percentage of that value as a loan. It's something like 60%. So in other words, if you had $1 million worth of cards in PWCC's vault, you could take a $600,000 loan out against that $1 million in cards. Now, I was never attracted to this because the interest rates were pretty high.
Yep.
And it's also a bad idea generally to margin, your securities or your cards or whatever, like taking out margin loans and doing this type of thing has often gotten investors in trouble. You see it happen a lot in the stock market where people take out loans against their stock portfolio.
Housing market.
Obviously, housing market.
Housing market's a big one.
Prime example.
Yeah.
Back what happened in 2008. And now we've just seen it happen in the sports card market.
Yeah.
So what was going on was that there were a lot of big collectors who were seeing all of their cards go up in value through 2019, through 2020, through the first few months of 2021, and they were taking out loans against the as much as they could against the value of their collection, and then they were turning around and buying more cards with the loan money. Then that caused their portfolio value to increase. And then I suspect what they would then do is they would then take another loan on the new cards they just bought, took that money and bought additional cards. And then they probably take another loan and took that money and bought additional cards. So which
snowballing
which
effect.
is actually very similar what happened, to what happened in the housing crisis in 2008, that people kept leveraging everything they could possibly leverage to buy more and more houses. And all it took was prices to come down on these cards more than 40%, because basically PWCC had about 40% worth of protection because they were only loaning against, 60% of the value. But unfortunately, prices did come down more than 40%, and they came down relatively rapidly. And PWCC obviously wasn't able to react to this quickly enough. When PWCC started to see people get upside down on these loans, they started to call the loans back. But then there were collectors who I think were so leveraged that they couldn't afford to repay the loan. So then what PWCC was left with was having to essentially auction all their cards off to get the money back out, which is part of the reason why we saw so many big, expensive, grail cards hit the market over the last 12 months, which is part of the reason why the high end of the market continued to come down in price, because there was so much inventory, which is actually part of the reason why I'm relatively optimistic about that portion of the market in the future, because I don't think you're going to see like this sequence that caused all that inventory to hit the market. We're coming out of that now. So hopefully you're going to see not as much of that type of, some of those cards, whoever bought them is hopefully now holding for some time, which then less supply will help prices go back up at some point. But anyway, PWCC got this money back from selling these cards, but it apparently wasn't enough in a lot of cases. So there was still money that the collectors owed. PWCC was upside down on some of these notes, and PWCC had taken on debt in order to finance this all to begin with. So now PWCC has to pay the debt back. Apparently some of that debt was coming due very soon, in a matter of weeks, and PWCC was looking at that, and there was concern as to whether they were going to be able to service all of that debt. So as a result of all that, PWCC said, maybe we need to get acquired. Yeah. And so they put themselves out there, they put word out that they were looking to get acquired. From what I understand, they got bids from collectors, from alt, and from Fanatics, and they had some good bids on the table. It was Fanatics that won at the end, but it was pretty close between them and collectors, from what I understand. I'm happy that PWCC got acquired. I would have been fine with it getting acquired by any of the three. But I do like them getting acquired by really, I would have been fine with any of the three, but I'm good with it being Fanatics, because Fanatics did state from the beginning that they wanted to create a full ecosystem, which meant at some point in time, Fanatics was going to create a marketplace. What the sports card hobby does not need right now is another marketplace. The sports card hobby has plenty of marketplaces. It does not need another marketplace. So I'm happy that Fanatics acquired PWCC, because this means that Fanatics will not attempt to start its own marketplace. Rather, it's just acquiring an existing one. If Fanatics had not acquired PWCC, then Fanatics inevitably likely would have started their own Fanatics marketplace, and the sports card world would have had just yet another marketplace. And I think we have too many marketplaces at the moment. So I think it's a good thing. I've been a big fan of PWCC. I use their services a lot. I think their technology is among the best of the auction houses currently.
I think their vault by far is probably the most,
Yes.
prestigious vault at this moment.
It is. It's been the one that was around for the longest. Obviously now Alt and Collectors, Golden have their own vaults, but those are newer.
Same with eBay. Yeah.
And eBay has their own vault as well, newer.
Yep.
PWCC's had a vault for a long time. And their vault model, I really liked, and I bought into it, early on. Like I started putting cards in PWCC's vault back in 2020. I think I started putting a lot of cards in their vault. And at one point I had $1.5 million worth of cards in their vault. I still have a lot. I still have hundreds of thousands of dollars, close to $1 million worth of cards in their vault. And so I do a lot of buying on PWCC. I do a lot of selling on PWCC. I like their services. And so I'm happy that Fanatics was able to acquire them, and Fanatics has gone on to say that it's business as normal. They're not going to make any immediate changes to PWCC. They're going to retain the staff that's still there. They're eventually going to integrate them, but they're not going to try to do anything right away. So for me, this is really good news for the collector community. I think this is a very, very good news for collectors, because what would have been a really bad news for collectors would have been if PWCC wasn't able to get acquired, this loan came due, they had to file for bankruptcy protection. And I don't know for certain that would have happened, but let's say they had gone into bankruptcy or, had to do another massive round of layoffs or whatever, that could have been really bad for the entire sports card hobby. And so thankfully we don't have to go through that. Fanatics came in and saved the day. PWCC is now part of, one of the big giants, obviously, in the hobby. So overall, I think it's a good thing. It's interesting now. It connects Fanatics with older cards, which hasn't been part of their business strategy up until this point. They've been solely focused on, obviously, the new stuff, because that's what they're producing. And I think that if Fanatics had built their own marketplace, their marketplace likely would have been more oriented around the new stuff. Now they've got a marketplace that's very well known for selling iconic cards all the way back to vintage. So it's a little bit of a different thing. I think that Fanatics did this opportunistically. I don't think that they necessarily were thinking marketplace acquisition or starting one right at this moment.
Right.
It was part of their plan. It was going to happen at some point, but it happened when it did, because PWCC happened to pop up in this situation, and for them, it was an opportunistic move. Okay,
so I have a couple questions coming off of that, right? So one, I would like for us to figure out, or I would like for you to sort of tell us what you think is a takeaway that businesses within the hobby can learn from what PWCC did, because obviously they were trying to have something available to consumers that made them more appealing in a vaulting sense and a, customer sense of trying to acquire new customers, keep them happy, so that, the loan against their cards program came about. What's something that a company or within the hobby can learn from what PWC has gone through, and getting acquired? And, unfortunately, sorry to everyone who was employees at PWCC who got laid off, who are part of this, because, there's a lot of, lower end employees who don't have understanding of the financials or sort of the trouble that a company is in. So it sort of sucks that they get caught in the in-between, but, hopefully they find a good place elsewhere. And then the other one is, when you're talking about the bidding that went on for this, it's interesting to me that Collectors was in on this because they have Golden. So, it's sort of, I'd like for us to maybe talk a little bit about why you think that they were in the race for this, when they already have a really great company family build. They've got a lot of companies within their structure that this seemed like a weird time to approach that, and why you think Fanatics was so eager to beat all of them out.
Yeah.
So it's like a three-fer.
Sure. All right, I'm gonna try to remember all these. Well, we'll start backwards.
Lesson learned.
Okay, we'll start with lesson learned. Sure. So there's a very key lesson in there, and that is that you need to create your business plan. All right, let me restate this, right? So when you are creating a business plan for any industry, but especially in a volatile industry like the sports card hobby, You have to create a business plan that can withstand the good times and the bad times. It's very easy to get caught up in the hype of the good times and assume that everything is going to continue to go up. Part of PWCC's business plan was based only on the good times. It was based on the idea that cards were going to sustain or rise in value, and therefore they were going to be able to loan money to people on those cards, and those loans were going to be secure because the chances that the card market would drop by more than 40%, which would then put them upside down on those loans, was very minimal. Well, that wasn't reality. What we have found out over the last couple of years was that the card market was overinflated in early 2021, and the average card dropped a lot more than 40% over the course of the last couple of years. PWCC ended up upside down on these loans and in a lot of financial trouble. They planned for the good times. They didn't put enough emphasis in their business plan on what could happen if things go south. And I think anybody who's starting a business in the sports card hobby needs to think about both, because this is a volatile market. What is your plan B? What happens if, we think prices are low today compared to what they were a couple of years ago, but what if the recession hits hard over the next couple of years and card prices and interest in cards dips another 50%? Do you have a business plan that's going to enable you to survive that? At least tread water till you get back to the good times again? Not every business in the hobby has that. PWCC didn't quite have that right. And I think that's a very important lesson.
Okay, so next question is, why do you think Collectors was in on the bidding here with their portfolio, already having Golden in it?
I think for Collectors, it was a move to take out what's probably their biggest competitor. They didn't need PWCC. Collectors has essentially what PWCC has. They have got a really respected marketplace. They've got their own vault. They've got their own tie-in with grading companies, just like, their own grading company, just like how PWCC has alliances with grading companies. So Collectors has that ecosystem. So I don't think they needed PWCC, but they saw an opportunity to take out one of their biggest competitors. PWC, when you think of high-end modern cards, when you think of your Grail cards from the last 10 or 20 years, it's Golden and PWCC that are seeing the vast majority of those. There are other auction houses like Heritage, which gets really big cards as well. They tend to get some of the older cards, some of the more vintage cards, and they get some modern stuff too, but they tend to veer a little, more vintage. And there's plenty of other nice auction houses that veer a little more in that direction as well. But in terms of the really big cards, modern, the $1 million modern cards,
Right.
the couple $100,000 modern cards, it's mainly PWCC and Golden. And so Collectors just saw that as an opportunity to potentially make that 100% Golden, and to take PWCC out of the equation.
Okay. And then lastly, in the intro, you're talking about Fanatics and, clearly the emergence of Fanatics as being a hobby leader and obviously a large company within the hobby. For them, sometimes timing definitely played into this. I mean, that's something that you definitely said. But what about this as a whole is something that you think Fanatics really saw as something they needed to win?
Well, for Fanatics, this just accelerates their timeline. So if Fanatics was going to do their own marketplace at some point in time, trying to build out your own marketplace is a big endeavor. They've already got their hands full right now. They're building out Fanatics Live, which is their live streaming platform. They chose to start with that instead of starting with a more traditional, web-based marketplace. And they also, if they're going to build their own vault out at some point, which they've talked about, but that was going to be a long-term, thing. There was some discussion that, some rumors that maybe they were going to buy ComC at some point, and that was going to be their vault solution. And I know they had some partnerships going with ComC. This probably isn't great news for ComC, although ComC's business is a lot different than PWCC's business. But this probably does mean that Fanatics is not going to be looking to partner with ComC in the long term, at least to the same degree that they have if they now have their own vault with PWCC. We'll see how it all plays out. But I think for Fanatics, it was just the ability to accelerate some of those plans and to achieve them more quickly and to acquire all this infrastructure at honestly a fraction of the price of what it would have sold for a year or two ago.
Right.
I've heard numbers. I don't want to say numbers because I don't know, if they're accurate at all, but I've heard what people have told me the numbers were on what Fanatics bid and bought all of this for, I mean, if it's anywhere close to true, it's pennies on the dollar compared to what PWCC would have sold for if they had sold like back in 2021. I mean, pennies. I mean, I think like, I'm talking like less than 10% of what PWCC probably would have sold for back in 2021.
That's a hard take for that company. I mean, you know, you've built up to such a point where you then have to turn around and realize sort of the hole that you've dug yourself in. But I mean, that is business, and that's, like you said, making the business plan that's appropriate.
It's tough. I'm sure. I mean, look, I'm sure those with ownership interest in PWCC are not thrilled. They're not happy with the financial aspect of this outcome.
Right.
Now, I think they might be. I think they are probably happy of getting that behind them, becoming part of the Fanatics family now, being able to, move forward in a good direction. Maybe I don't know what the terms were. Maybe some of the leaders there are getting stock and Fanatics. I'm not sure, but I think at a minimum they're probably happy to be moving forward in that direction. But yeah, financially for the actual owners of PWCC, it's a tough pill to swallow. But I mean, there's been a lot of tough pills to swallow in the sports card hobby for a lot of companies over the last couple of years. I mean, there's been a lot of companies that, there's been companies that have been beat up, that have laid people off, that have lost, tons of revenue, all that kind of stuff. And we've seen, at Sports Card Investor, we've seen some of our own metrics go down. Yep. It's part of the reality right now. And thankfully, we've been protected from that, to a degree. We haven't had to do, layoffs or anything because we didn't take on lots of capital or do super risky things in earlier stages that some companies did. But, so some companies are in a little bit of a tougher position now, and less able to ride out the storm. So it's tough out there for certain companies that did certain things, like loaned against cards, or maybe took on a lot of investment capital and burned through a lot of it and are now, struggling
needing
to make
more
their business plan
investment,
work.
Yeah. So, in those frames of mind, the sports card market is slightly always a curveball. Like, there's always some unpredictability to it. Speaking of unpredictability, you've said at the beginning also that Fanatics is looking at creating licensed NBA cards this year, which is, way ahead of, again, talking about advancing the timeline.
Yeah.
What can we talk about with that?
Yeah, this is a surprise because Panini had the exclusive license with the NBA to create NBA cards, like officially licensed NBA cards. Like, they're the only ones that were allowed to do it. Yeah. Until I think it was 2025 or 2026. So a few more years. And then there was a tweet by Shams, who's a big NBA inside reporter, a few months ago that was pretty cryptic, that said Fanatics is going to start producing basketball cards this fall. Well, it's kind of like, well, what's he talking about? Is that's not, if they've been creating some basketball cards that are not licensed ones, so that's not really news. Why would he report that? Is he insinuating that they're going to actually create fully licensed NBA cards this fall? Now, I've heard, this is completely unconfirmed, and I by the way, directly asked Michael Rubin this question, and he did not answer the question. He danced around the question.
Well, it's just smart. It's smart.
Fine.
Yeah.
But I have heard that Fanatics somehow got this built into the NBA's new collective bargaining agreement. I don't know exactly how that was able to create a potential end around here on Panini's licenses, but that's what I've heard. I don't know. It's not confirmed. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm reading the tea leaves. I think there is a more likely chance than not we're going to see officially licensed NBA cards from Fanatics this fall.
Fascinating. So then that also ties into those, we're talking about the autographed cards from these rookies and then how they were able to wean that in on the deal. Is it just because of the weight of Fanatics that they can approach these players to have that sort of deal put on the table? I mean, Fanatics is a very large name, a very large company. They have a lot of foothold within, the NBA, the NFL, all the major sports, right? Because they deal with apparel, they deal with merchandise.
Yeah.
Is that just they just have the gumption or the backup behind them to be able to put that deal on the table?
I think it's the cash. So there's been rumors going around the sports card hobby for a couple months now that I've heard that Fanatics signed Victor Wembanyama to an exclusive autograph deal, meaning he cannot sign for Panini products, meaning he can't have RPAs and National Treasures or Flawless or signed Prism rookie cards. If true, that would be a massive deal. Now, I heard the rumor. I wasn't going to report on the rumor because it was just a rumor. Then I saw Michael Rubin on Instagram fly to Paris with Mike Mahan, who's the CEO of Fanatics Collectibles, and they went to Paris together, and they spent what appeared to be like 2 days with Victor Wembanyama, and he was signing autographs and doing things with them there. So once I saw that, I'm like, okay, if they're going to fly to Paris and spend a couple days with this kid, I'm thinking they signed him to an exclusive autograph deal. They won't confirm it,
right?
But that looks somewhat confirmation-ish to me, right? Then Ryan Johnson, card collector 2, goes to the Panini NFL rookie experience last week where all the rookies are there, and he notes that Bryce Young, and I think he said CJ Stroud, were not signing autographs on cards. Other rookies apparently were. These guys were not signing. So he just observes this. So he speculates, I think they might be exclusive with Fanatics and therefore not signing Panini cards while other rookies are doing so. And so it was just an observation. It's possible that, he didn't see the full picture. We don't know, but he was on the grounds and he observed this and he said, I think this might be the case. And I mean, that based on what we know with Fanatics and how they are
going back and forth,
making sharky moves right now. This would not surprise me. And what just a swipe at Panini this would be. I mean, Panini just, I mean, we're talking about Panini and the stock and the availability that they're going to have to produce or manufacture cards for the next couple of years, which is already limited, right? Does this put it, we've talked about Fanatics and the Panini negotiations. Does this make this one of those things where, if Fanatics can do this, then players know that Fanatics can do this, and they know that there's cash behind it, which means that Fanatics most likely can sign more, which means that every upcoming rookie class, you might have the top rookies not being available, which makes your products completely undesirable. It definitely makes Panini products less desirable. I mean, literally, if when the next football National Treasures and Flawless come out for this upcoming year's rookie class, if there's not Bryce Young RPAs because he's not allowed to sign, if there's not CJ Stroud RPAs because he's not allowed to sign, that product becomes worth a lot less.
Yep.
You're not going to have the, crazy, everyone buying into backyard breaks and clips of them going nuts trying to pull these cards because
they don't exist.
There's not going to be as much hype if they don't have autographs in the product. I mean, they'll still have one-of-ones in the product and that kind of, but if they don't have autographs in the product, that's it really limits what they're able to do with their cards. So that would be, it would be unfortunate, I think, for collectors. So this one I don't like for collectors.
Okay.
Because, especially now, maybe Fanatics, as I said earlier, it sounds like Fanatics likely has the ability to create licensed NBA cards this fall under the Topps brand. If that's the case, then that's fine because you're going to get Victor Wembanyama autographs in Topps Chrome and whatever other products Topps comes out with this fall, theoretically, right? So he'll at least have autographs. They just won't be in the Panini products. It means that everyone's going to be shifting over and chasing all the Topps products. That's fine. But I haven't heard for football that Fanatics has figured out any way to speed up getting their football license. So if that's the case, then really all Fanatics has done here has given a little bit of an FU to Panini and said these guys aren't going to be in your products, but then they might not be signing cards at all for the next few years, or maybe Fanatics is going to do unlicensed cards, but people aren't going to be excited about that. So you could have a period of time here for the next few years where you could have the top rookies in football with no autographs on any licensed card. That's not good for collectors.
No, it's not.
So I can understand Fanatics making some of these sharky moves that they're making, and a lot of them make sense to me. And I understand why they would do it if they did it, but that's the one that's not collector friendly. Now, of course, what I think they're trying to do, assuming this is all true and accurate, right? And I'm going off of reports by other people here. I haven't confirmed this myself, but assuming this is all true and accurate, then I think what Fanatics is doing is really just trying to put the screws to Panini to sell. I mean,
I mean, this is like an out of left field type of move that like is, you know, if you're there in your Panini, you're thinking about what Fanatics might do to try to push along this acquiring of Panini, which, you know, we know that there have been talks, ongoing
lots of talks
for a very long time.
They apparently had a deal that was like in the 11th hour, like about to close and fell apart at the very last minute in October of last year. So they've been very close to acquiring Panini. And I don't know all the reasons why it didn't work out.
Like Jaws.
But I mean, like, you know, Fanatics. And then the other thing they did, which we've, you know, heard reported, is that Fanatics hired several of Panini's key employees away from Panini. They all quit on the same day. They all walked out of Panini, quit on the same day, joined Fanatics on the same day. And apparently at first I was like, there's no way Panini didn't know about this and didn't like legally try to pursue this. Well, I was wrong, because Panini was surprised by it, and they did try to legally pursue it. They filed a lawsuit against Fanatics shortly after this occurred, you know, for stealing their employees away and saying they were tampering with their business and everything like this. And in the initial ruling, the judge shut the lawsuit down, said, you know, ruled in Fanatics' favor. I don't know if there's more ways that can go or whatever, but I think they tried to get an injunction or something, and it was unsuccessful. So Fanatics got away with that as well. So, I mean, what more ways could Fanatics just like be driving a screw into, like, you know, Panini's side than to steal their key employees, you know, defend the lawsuit successfully when Panini tries to sue them, you know,
get the top rookies
and exclusive autograph deals so they can't get into Panini's product, get the NBA license early, so you know, so they might be competing with with Panini this fall. I mean, like, all of these things. If you're a leader at Panini, like, you are under assault right now from Fanatics. You are under assault from Fanatics. Like, they are gunning at you. And by the way, this is Michael Rubin's MO, according to people that have seen him operate in previous businesses. And look, there's nothing wrong with this. Like, this is big business. These are boss moves. This is like go big or go home stuff, right? I mean, this is how business works at the top level. This is not kumbaya, let's hold hands and be friends and, like, you know, we're all going to be successful together. This is, there's blood in the water, and I'm a shark, and I'm going to make shark moves.
So Panini's the
win.
chum is what you're saying. Panini is the chum.
That's how they're being treated at the moment. Yeah. And unfortunately, I mean, and this all goes back to Fanatics getting the licenses to begin with, which was like just out of left field, you know, for Panini and for Topps, totally out of left field that happened. Now, good on Topps, I guess, that they said,
they saw the blood in the water.
Topps said, oh, we're screwed.
Yeah.
So instead of trying to fight against, you know, and I'm sure Topps hated Fanatics' guts. I'm sure Topps leadership hated Fanatics' guts. Yet they said to themselves, it's business. We just got outflanked. We got two choices. We can be stubborn and cry and kick and, you know, and be angry about what just happened and say, screw you, Fanatics. Or we can say, okay, that sucked that just happened, but what is our best path forward from here? And it clearly, Topps decided their best path forward was playing really nice with Fanatics, getting acquired, trying to work out the best acquisition deal they could work out, and then eagerly and enthusiastically becoming part of, you know, being really the company that Fanatics is now. It's leading the whole mission for Fanatics, right? I mean, you know, Topps is it, right, for Fanatics right now in terms of card manufacturing. So that's what Topps decided to do. I don't know all the ins and outs of Fanatics discussions with Panini, but it seems like Panini took a different approach.
Right.
And it seems like Fanatics is mad that Panini took a different approach, and it seems like Fanatics is now putting it to Panini for taking a different approach.
So this feels like in a situation, this feels like a couple different things, right? This feels like, you know, Panini and Topps were sharks in the industry, and then, you know, a bigger shark came along and then it's now this territorial thing, right? This also could be related as like there's a new kid in school who wants to run the click, and Topps and Panini were their own clicks and they weren't happy with it. And Topps integrated, and Panini is now getting it from two ends with Topps and Fanatics. And I know that we talked about this before when we were talking about like what Fanatics is doing and acquiring the licenses and all this stuff, but is this not somewhat coming back to this whole idea of being monopolistic?
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking about a company within the hobby having all of the licenses, having all of the product that's coming out, I mean, is that not a monopoly?
Look, I'm not. Some people are really worried about the Fanatics being a monopoly thing, and the PWCC acquisition giving them even more of a monopoly. I don't quite see it that way, because from a manufacturing standpoint, we've had a monopoly forever, like for a long time. I mean, Panini has had the exclusive license to create football and basketball card for years. Topps has had the exclusive license to create baseball cards for years. So they have monopolies over manufacturing. Now it's just Fanatics is the monopoly instead of Panini and Topps being monopolies. When it comes to like acquiring PWCC, I mean, Fanatics is going to have stiff competition on the marketplace side, right? I mean, it's not like Golden's going to roll over and eBay's going to roll over and Alt's going to roll over and Heritage is going to roll over. I mean, no. Fanatics is getting into very competitive territory by getting into the marketplace and vaulting segment, right? And, when it comes to other things they're doing like Fanatics Live, I think they're going to be very successful with Fanatics Live, but they've got formidable competitors there. Now, Fanatics controls the supply of product, which gives them some real unique advantages with Fanatics Live becoming successful. But Whatnot has a ton of money in the bank and a big, big head start. And of course, you got others out there as well. So I don't see it as a true monopoly, nor do I see it as being as quite destructive as some people do. But look, I get the concern, but I don't think it's that much different than how things have been.
Okay, so but if we're talking about the concern that people might have, I mean, you said specifically like how you feel as a collector with what has been done, with the signing of the exclusive signing deals with the rookies, that you're not particularly fond of that as a collector. How can collectors feel about everything that's going on right now within the hobby? Like, what is the temperature, in your opinion, that collectors should be feeling on these things?
Well, so Fanatics has been very clear that they are here for the collector, and they use the word collector all the time in their communication. They clearly have made it a like corporate mandate that everybody on Fanatics and Topps teams are here for the collector, and they bring collector up whenever they speak about anything.
Right.
And their stated goal is to 10x the number of collectors in the sports card hobby. They didn't say 10x the number of flippers or the number of investors,
right,
or even the number of people buying and selling cards. They said 10x the number of collectors. The use of the word collector was very intentional. They want to grow the collector base, and they also want to have a good relationship with the collectors that are currently in the hobby. Now, there are collectors who are absolutely concerned about whether, Fanatics' actions are actually going to be pro-collector or not. And to that,
well, they've been very aggressive, and as
they've
you
been very
said, there are
aggressive.
some things that have been non-pro-collector.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe. Like, sure. Yeah, no, there have been. I will say there have been. I didn't like how they just did this Dutch auction for Bowman Sapphire. I did not like that. We'll talk about that on Cards on the Table. But I don't think that was pro-collector, how they did, how they did the format they used. I like the idea of Dutch auctions.
Yeah.
I don't like the format they used, which was the Panini format of doing Dutch auctions, where you bought it into different prices and whatever you paid is what you got the box at. I much preferred the Zero Cool format, which was where everyone ended up paying the same price at the end of the Dutch auction, which was the lowest bid above the cut line. But that's something to talk about in another time. You're right. There have been certain moves like that, and possibly signing some of these guys to exclusive autograph deals, which I do not think are collector friendly. I do, though, think they've done a lot of things that are collector friendly, and they're placing emphasis in the right areas. They're placing emphasis on getting rid of redemptions and having more interesting, products that are within cards, like the MLB debut patches. They're placing emphasis on getting more kids into the hobby, and they're doing a giant program with Little League Baseball to do that. They're placing, emphasis on evaluating the pricing strategy and making sure that cards are available at reasonable prices for different, levels of collectors that are getting in. They're looking at a lot of the crazy markups that were taken in the distribution chains over the last couple of years, and getting rid of that stuff and making sure that cards are not being like hoarded and marked up on the secondary market to such an extreme degree that it makes boxes unattainable. They're doing a lot of stuff like that I do believe is collector friendly, and I think we'll see more and more of that. So I'm still very optimistic that Fanatics is going to be good for the collector, and I do believe that we'll look back 5 or 10 years from now and say Fanatics isn't perfect, but it's a lot better than it used to be when it was Panini and Topps operating before Fanatics came into the fold.
Yeah, I think when you look at any business, though, I mean, it's the same thing that we've held in feelings to any company within the hobby. There are things that they've done where we're like, that's great. That's really good for the hobby, for the general goodwill, good nature, good, health of the hobby. There are other things that companies have done and you're like, what are they doing? That is not, that's not strategically how you would have thought that should have happened. So I think that, when you're talking about good or bad, and just to a feel of like how you appropriate those actions, for your interpretation, that could be good, it could be bad. People are going to have different opinions on that. But when it comes to like the actual business owners, like the local business owners for the hobby, the people who own businesses, local card shops, breaking businesses, what should they be thinking at this moment? Like what's the good thing, bad things for them?
Yeah. Well, my takeaway for them, I mean, it remains to be seen how good or bad this is. I think it's going to be really good for some and bad for others. I think who it's going to be bad for, I think Fanatics is going to be bad for the companies in the hobby that have operated doing things a certain way for a long time and are fat, dumb, and happy right now and are not willing to adapt. Those dealers who have gotten huge allocations of wax from, forming them good old boy relationships with the executives at Panini and Topps over many, many years and at the distribution companies. And they love the profit margin because they buy all of this wax at huge prices and control a lot of the supply of wax and then resell a lot of it out the back door to breakers and to other card shops. And they're the kingpin sitting on their big pile of wax. That's going away. And so those dealers are not going to love what's about to happen. I think, though, that there's other dealers and breakers who are going to look at where this is going, and they're going to position themselves to be Fanatics friendly, to do the things that Fanatics wants them to do. And I know what some of those things are. It's having clean, modern stores that are updated, that look fresh. It's having a breaking operation with really good content, great personalities, great camera quality, on the up and up, entertaining to watch. These are things Fanatics is looking for. They want to support businesses that are really putting out high quality work, high quality customer experiences, whether that's in store or whether that's through a live stream. That's who Fanatics is going to support. So what it means is people are going to have to do a little more work, and they're going to have to look at where the puck is going, and they're going to have to go there. And so I think the best thing people can do is listen to what Fanatics is saying, position yourself to be able to provide what Fanatics wants you to be able to provide, which is a great experience to customers, and to then get to know Fanatics leadership, go to events, go to conferences, network with Fanatics, get aligned to where they're trying to go. How do you add value to Fanatics? That is what every entrepreneur in the sports card hobby should be asking themselves today. How do you add value to Fanatics?
Interesting. I want to add a counterpoint here that I think that you're hitting on, but I think is also important to note is that when you're thinking about what Fanatics would like and what would be a benefit to Fanatics, you're talking about this idea of 10xing the collector base, right? Because that's what Fanatics means, right? That's what their business plan is. That's what their strategy is for this particular moment. So when you're talking about what would be beneficial to Fanatics is in turn talking about what would be beneficial to the future of this hobby. And a lot of it is youth driven. A lot of it is new customer driven. As you said, it's about creating that experience when people walk in that they feel like it's not dated, but that it is future forward. And I think that that's really important when you're talking about, what Fanatics, which is a company, but what Fanatics as a word, as a meaning means to the hobby. And I think that that's a really important point.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good way to say it.
Now, segment part, because I think this is going to be really interesting coming off of that. I wanted to ask you for our bit segment today. I'm going to give you a role. I'm going to give you a title. And I want you to tell me what you see the future of your title or the future of your company, what you see that coming on, like what can you foresee for that? Okay. So your new title, your new role is that you are now the CEO of Fanatics.
Oh, I'm Michael Rubin. I've taken over for Rubin.
Rubin has left.
Oh, wow.
He has passed the keys over to you.
Did Rubin leave me his private jet and his home in the Hamptons? Did he leave that? Because if he left those things to me, I'm good. We're good.
The details have not been ironed out yet.
Did I get his season tickets to all the Philly teams? Can I go stand on the field and the court?
If that's what you want to do, then by all means, yes, you've got that. But
Rubin's a little bit of a party guy. I've been watching his Instagram. He has a good time. He lives life the right way. Well, he goes around. He goes to all the different, with all the different athletes, all these rookie premieres and everything.
I mean, if you have that access, you should use that
sure,
access.
100%.
Why not?
He seems to have fun with life. So I'd be happy to be Rubin for a day.
You're now
good.
Rubin.
Okay.
You're the CEO of Fanatics.
Yep.
What does the future hold for you? For Fanatics collectibles.
What I would do right now is I would do absolutely nothing more in terms of acquisitions or major moves for the next 12 months.
Okay.
Because they have
12 months, a year.
Yeah, a year.
Okay.
I would say to the team, okay, we bought PWCC. That was opportunistic. That timing wise was maybe a little unexpected. We weren't necessarily planning on getting in the marketplace space so quickly, but it was a great opportunity. We couldn't pass it up. That said, we have so many big, important things in the works that we have to deliver on. We have Fanatics Live that is going to be launching in the upcoming months. Fanatics Live has to deliver. That's a huge part of our business plan. That's got to be a great experience. We've got to get this sports card hobby onto Fanatics Live. We got to attract the best breakers, the best content creators to go onto Fanatics Live. We've got to beat the competition with Fanatics Live. We're trying to do big time improvements to our product lineup. We're trying to find ways to make it, RPAs relevant in baseball, with the MLB debut patches, give like baseball products big chases. We're redefining products. We're trying to make certain products more kid friendly, certain products more friendly to sell in hobby shops than they are today. We're trying to make certain products more breaker friendly. We're trying to find the right price points for everything that we're doing, right? And we're trying to fix things like quality control and redemptions and things that have, somewhat plagued the industry for long times. Meanwhile, we potentially have got basketball cards coming out this fall. Apparently we do. And, we're going to have football cards not too far down the road. We got to prepare for all of that. We've been doing a ton of hiring. We have a ton of new people on our team, like unbelievable amounts of new people. We've been building new offices in New York and in LA that are now open. This is all chaotic. Like, this is a lot. That is all a lot. And as the leader of the company, it is like you've got to be able to do things really, really well. And it is impossible to do too many things all at the same time really, really well. Acquiring PWCC is a whole nother thing to now think about. Marketplace and Vault and all this kind of stuff. That's giving them even more burden that they have to now think about and maintain that business. I think they need to focus on the priorities that they've already established for the next year, not make any other acquisitions or massive moves like that. Some people are saying now they're going to go after Grading Company, they're going to go after Beckett. I think that would be a total mistake at this moment. Does that make sense a few years from now? Maybe. But at the moment, you got a lot on your plate. Execute it well. Because the one way that you could really start to lose the hobby is if execution around some of this stuff is poor. If products come out plagued with quality control issues. Right. If things are mishandled if cards are missing from products, some of the stuff has already happened to them over the last year, right? And if those things start to happen across the board, if Fanatics Live is a subpar experience, if PWCC's experience now starts to degrade, people are going to you're going to have collectors that are going to be super angry, and they're all going to be pointing their fingers at Fanatics, and that is not what they want. So I really think they need to now concentrate on just delivering on the multitude of things that they want to deliver on.
Mr. Rubin.
Yes.
Question. You said stay stable for the next 12 years.
12 months.
12 months. Sorry. Yes. Sorry. For the next 12 months. Apologies. Now, question is, you were just aggressive with possibly rumored signing rookies to exclusive autograph deals, which may hint that you're trying to be aggressive towards Panini. Are you then now saying that you don't want to have the possibility of acquiring Panini within the next 12 months?
That you need to do. Yeah, that's a fair point, right? I didn't say that yet. You're right. I should have said that in my little monologue.
Rubin.
That is the one thing they should do in the next 12 months. You're absolutely right. In the next 12 months, if there's a way to get the Panini deal done, get the damn Panini deal done. Because this waiting game of we're not going to have an NFL license for 3 years, and it's this waiting game is disastrous.
You keep punching. You're doing a boxing match.
Yeah.
Just do a KO. Do a KO.
I agree. Of course, but they got to have two dancing, right? I mean, if Panini says no, Panini says no. It's not like they can, so all they can do is try to put as much pressure on Panini as they possibly can, which it really seems like they're doing at the moment.
Yes.
It seems like they're putting as much pressure on Panini as they possibly can.
Oh man. Well, it was so nice meeting you, Mr. Rubin. I'm gonna bring Geoff back on.
I'm happy to be on. Well, I preferred being on the Forbes top 500 billionaires list, which I was for a moment. I'm no longer on the list, but it was a nice. It was maybe I'll still be someday, but someday. But I'm not there right now. I would have shortcutted things if I could have retained Mr. Rubin's persona there for a little while longer.
Well, it was still a great episode. I feel like we got a lot of stuff covered here. I feel like it was a really thorough episode.
It was a thorough episode. I'm excited to see where it all goes. I'm excited to see the future. I remain bullish and excited about Fanatics. I think they're going to do really good things. They're being aggressive, and that's business, and that's how it works.
That is how it works. Outside of this hobby, that is how it works in every sector of business. It does. For sure. For sure. Well, I hope that you really liked this episode. You can find us on all of the social medias at It's Geoff Wilson. And then you can also see us on YouTube at The Geoff Wilson Show. Or if you want to catch us on podcasts and put us in your ear and listen to us while you're driving or throwing chum in the water to catch some sharks, then you can do that. And also all of the podcast channels, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them.
There you go.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, Callie. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time. Take care.